Hey guys, how's it going? This is Anuradha Gupta, and today we are talking about Azure Bastion. We'll see what is Azure Bastion and how we can set it up step by step using the Azure portal. So, Azure Bastion is a platform as a service solution to connect to your Azure VMs without exposing them to the internet. So, basically, you don't really need a public IP to the VMs just to connect to it. So, let's say these are our production VMs, we don't really want them to be accessible from the internet. So we can just use Azure Bastion to connect to them. So Azure Bastion would work for both RDP as well as SSH connection. So depending on which kind of operating system is, you can use either Windows or Linux. And it uses your web browser to initiate the connection. So there won't be any direct connections from your client machine to the Azure VMs. Okay, so it will initiate the connection from the Bastion and you can control it using your web browser. So till your web browser supports HTML5, you should be good, which most modern browser does. Okay, so you can use the same browser that you're used to log into the Azure portal. It adds another layer of authentication. So in order to connect to your virtual machine, you first need to log into the portal. So you are authenticating using your Azure account or Microsoft account, and after that you will initiate the connection and log in with the you know virtual machine credentials, so the operating system credentials. So you're authenticating two times just to connect to the virtual machines. And the connection from your machine to the Bastion will be TLS encrypted. Okay, so it will be using HTTPS. So connection over the internet will be encrypted as well. All right. So that is in general what is Azure Bastion is and what are its features. So to set up Azure Bastion, it is pretty simple. You just need a virtual machine. So let's say we have a VNet, all right, and in that VNet we may have multiple subnets. All right, and let's say this is where our virtual machines are. So what we will do is we will need another subnet specifically to Azure Bastion service, and there we will deploy the Bastion service. So from our client machine, we will connect to the Bastion, and from Bastion, the traffic will be privately connecting to the virtual machine. So this would be your private traffic. So that's why we don't really need a public IP or need to expose them to the internet. However, Bastion would need a public IP because that's how we're gonna connect to Bastion. And this traffic will be TLS encrypted. All right. And this doesn't generally work on your VNet only. It works with your paired VNets as well. So let's say we have another VNet, all right, that have certain machines. Okay. Sorry, I'll just move my stuff better down. Okay. So there, let's say, is another VM. So we can use the same Bastion, all right, to connect to the paired VNets as well. So this should be used here as well. Only thing is it has to be paired with its VNet. So this should be paired. Okay. So that's how you can connect to your VNets or your virtual machines via the Azure Bastion. Okay. So to set up Bastion in our environment, we need to be mindful of a couple of things. So what we will do is let's set up an environment. Okay. So what we will do is we'll set up a similar environment. We will create a VNet. Okay. In that VNet, we would have subnets, and we would have another subnet. That's where our virtual machine will go. So let's say we would have our virtual machines here, and we can set up both a Linux and Windows machine. So we will see how RDP and SSH both from the Azure Bastion looks in action. And this subnet is where we will deploy the Bastion. So to deploy a Bastion, you first need a subnet of its own. So you need a subnet that would be named as Azure Bastion subnet. Okay, so it has to be named exactly like that, and there shouldn't be anything else in this subnet. So you can get away with the capitalization, all right, but the latter should be exactly the same as your Bastion subnet. And then we will deploy the Bastion service into the subnet. So that's one thing, and this subnet should be /26 or larger. Okay, so the larger the better. So you can go with /25, /24, given that you have to scale the Bastion. So one Bastion can do up to 50 SSH and 25 RDP connections. Okay, so this is per Bastion, and we can scale it up to 50 Bastion. All right, it's like scalable up to 15 instances. All right, given that we are using standard SKU. So there are standard and basic SKU. Basic is for test workload. It gives you up to 2 instances. All right, but if you're using standard, you can get up to 50 instances per Bastion service. Okay, so that's that. And for Bastion, you would also need a public IP that will be working with the Bastion DNS, and that will be the one that our browser or our machine will use to connect. So let's say this is our client machine, all right, and we will connect to this one, and from there internally we will go RDP and SSH here. Okay, so yeah, that's all about it. So let's just go to the Azure portal and set it up. So I'll just go to the resource group first and create a resource group. Let's call it Bastion-RG. Okay, I'll put it in a region closer to me. So let's put it in Central India and just review and create. After that, we can go ahead and create a virtual machine, because if we create a virtual machine, we will automatically get a VNet and subnets as well. So we'll go ahead and create a virtual machine. Let's call it first Windows VM, win-VM. I'll give it a name and I'll choose, let's say, Windows 11. 2 CPUs and 8 GB RAM is fine, and I will give a username and password. Okay, so you don't need to allow any public inbound ports, so I can just click none here. Licensing, I will click yes. And if I go to networking, you can see it is creating a new VNet, it is creating a subnet, and it is creating a public IP for the VM as well. But this is the machine we're going to connect using the Bastion, so I'll just click on none. So no public IP will be created to this machine. And for the VNet, I will just click on create new and just change the name. Let's just call it VM VNet only. All right. And everything for else should be fine. I'll just go ahead and review and create. And just create. Okay. So I'll just pause the video, and once this is done, we'll come back. Okay, so our virtual machine and VNet is created. So I'll just go back and create one other virtual machine. Let's create a Linux one now. Let's call it lin-vm, and Ubuntu should be fine. I'll use password and same thing. Alright, so none in public inbound port, and going to networking, it will be deployed in the same VNet, and I don't need a public IP here as well. Just develop it. Okay, so till this gets created, let's open Azure in new tab. And what we will do is we'll go to the virtual network that has been created, and there we will go ahead and create a new subnet for Bastion. So I'll go to subnets, click on subnet, and give it a name Azure Bastion subnet. Alright, so hit save here. So that is there. Now we can go back and choose insert for bastions and create a new bastion. So resource group, I'll choose the same. Name, I will give, let's say, test hyphen bastion. Tier standard should be fine, and you can see you can increase the count of bastion instances. So one instance can support up to 50 SSH and 25 RDP connections. And if you're using 2, you can just multiply it by 2. If you're using more, you can just multiply that. And you can change this instance count after as well. So virtual network, I'll choose the VM VNet, and it will automatically take the subnet that we have given. Okay, so it will use a public IP, and we can just give that name, or you can give a better name, let's say bastion hyphen public IP. Okay, and that's all you have to do, and hit next. If you need any additional like IP based connections or shareable links, like additional features, you can check mark it here, or you can enable these later as well. So I'll just do review and create, and hit create. Okay, so we will wait for this, and bastion can take up to 10 to 15 minutes to be created. Okay, so I'll just pause the video, and once this is done, we'll come back as well. Alright, so looks like our bastion has been deployed. So let's just go to the resource. And yeah, that's all there is. And if there is any session initiated from the bastion, it will look like this. So let's just go back to the virtual machines. So we have these two virtual machines, right? And let's say I want to connect to the Linux VM using Bastion. So I'll just go there and click on connect. And here, instead of using RDP or SSH, I will just choose Bastion. Okay, and click on use Bastion. And it will choose the bastion that would be available. So you can set using test bastion, which is the name we gave. And here I will add username and password, which I set up using the creation of this VM. Okay, and hit connect. And automatically it should open a new tab. If it doesn't open for you, make sure the pop-up blocks and everything is disabled. All right, and that's just like that. I'm in the Linux VM. So you can see I can do hostname. I'm in the Linux VM. Okay. That's so simply from the browser you can see the connection is secure. It is HTTPS encrypted as well, and we don't need to use our own machine to initiate a connection. You don't need a clients like Putty or whichever SS client you might be using. So that's that. And similar thing, if I go to Windows VM, I can click on connect, and same thing, go to Bastion, use Bastion, and enter username and password, and hit connect, and it will go ahead and initiate a RDP connection directly from my browser. Okay, so we'll let it boot up, and in the meanwhile we can go to the overview, and for Linux VM we can say we didn't have any public IP. For Windows VM, I guess we forgot to uncheck this one, so I'll just go to that and go to overview of the public IP and click dissociate. So you don't really need it. I guess we accidentally uh, you know forgot to remove it. Okay, so just like you can see in Linux VM, it is no public IP. Same thing, we are still able to connect to it, and you can run commands and so on directly from here. And just like that, we are able to connect to the Windows machine as well. We'll wait for it to load, and that's all. You have a Windows machine, and you are accessing the RDP directly from the browser. Okay, and if I see here, this machine doesn't have a public IP, and we're still able to connect and use it. Okay, so from our machine to the Bastion, it is encrypted TLS, and from Bastion to the subnet and their machines, the connection is private. Okay, so yeah, that's all about Azure Bastion and how we can set it up. If you have any further question, you can ask in the comments, and yeah, stay tuned for the next videos. Thank you.